We will be looking at 3 ways of transporting villagers in Minecraft and rate them in 3 categories: how much setup is needed, how fast this method is, and how precise it is. Alright, the first method is with a workstation. You can use any workstation for this. In my case, I'm using a blast furnace. You see here the villager, and this is the area that I want to get him to. And it's actually, in the most basic principle, quite easy. Villagers follow a workstation if they don't have a job. So you can place the workstation, the villager will follow it, you can remove the workstation, place it again, and the villager follows it, and we are here right now. This villager is 48 blocks away from the workstation, and in theory they can register the workstation up to 48 blocks away, but sometimes their AI just has them wander another direction and then they're out of that direction, as you see right here. So I would always make sure to be a little bit closer. If we place it now, he will find it, as you can see. And now he actually found this one over there. Sometimes you want to be very precise and have the villager enter a 1x1 hole. We can easily do that with this method as well. First, remove this workstation here. Then we want to add some kind of staircase up here and block the sides of. Place a trapdoor and open it and place the workstation on the other side. With this setup, the villager should be walking into the hole. This way we can break this workstation and place it back down here. Let's talk about the big flaw of this method, and that's all the workstations that you might have in your base or that are in the village where you have your villagers from. When we find villages that don't have a job yet, it's not that difficult. We can just still place the workstation and hope for the best. And if we lure him away far enough, it's actually not an issue anymore. The main problem starts when you have villagers that already have a profession, or you have too many block sites like the composter around. In that case, you have to run around and break all of these. So we have to break this, maybe go into the church. You know the drill. Once you have removed all the workstations, it's as easy as before. The only problem now is that you might have multiple villagers following you, and in this way you might not be as precise anymore. I wanted to look at a more real-world scenario where this method comes in handy quite easy. You can see this villager and we want to get him up this hill. And with this method, you basically almost need no setup at all, and you're getting him up there quite fast. This would never be possible with boats, and with Minecart, it would need so much setup. And already he is on this hill. So I am rating this first method of using workstations. In a specific circumstance, the setup gets 3 out of 3 points because you don't need any. In many cases, you still need a little bit of setup of removing workstations, especially in your base, which can be annoying. So in general, it's a 2 out of 3 for the setup. Regarding speed, I think I'm giving it 2 out of 3 points. I think it's fairly fast for the little setup that we need. But if you compare it to minecarts later, it pales in comparison. And for the precision, I think I will give it 2 out of 3 points, because it is quite precise, as you saw earlier with the trapdoor trick, but it takes some space, and villagers can always be distracted. If it's nighttime, they are looking for a bed. If there's a zombie, they get scared. So sometimes it can get a little bit sketchy. The second method of transporting villagers is using a boat, and this is probably one of the methods that's quite well known. If you have a villager, just place a boat next to him, maybe try it again, but quite easily they just enter the boat. Once they're in, you can enter as well, and then you can just drive the boat on land, and as you can see, we are getting to our target. This method obviously shines once you have some water on your way, and then you can go really quickly, but you do have the issue of not being able to leave the boat really easily. You can combine methods. In this way, for example, I would just use a blast furnace for this last step, but if you want to go pure boat, it can be quite annoying. There are some terrible downsides to this method as well. For example, if you have pathways, which you often find in villages, you will have an issue to cross them, because actually this pathway is lower than the grass and you can't go upstairs with the boat. So if we take this villager again, we go onto the grass, we can actually not leave the grass anymore. One way of fixing that, which is still annoying, is to just use a hoe on the path block. That will turn this path block into farmland, and this, if there's no water nearby, will then turn into a full block of dirt. And then you can just enter the boat again and move on. If we come back into our real world, you can see that this method is quite an issue. I can very easily imagine you have some big ocean or lake and you come with the boat, but then you use the workstation, for example. But if you really want to use the boat, I think the easiest way is to use a piston, but that can become annoying quite easily. You put a piston into the ground, a lever next to it, you go into the boat, you drive on top of the piston, you power the piston, you can enter the boat again, and you have managed to go up by one level, and this is really, really slow. We have not yet talked about precision using boats, and this is also terrible actually. If you have a 1x1 hole, you cannot easily get this boat in there. If I press F3 and F3 and B, we see the hitboxes, and you see the box of this boat, it is bigger than this hole. I think just using the boat, there's not really a way to get a villager inside a hole like this. Maybe we could use some blocks and push it with pistons in there, but that's really, really an issue. It takes so long. So precision just using a boat is not really given. You will have to make some kind of box that the boat fits in. And then at maximum, you can get the villager into a 2x2 area, which is still nice, but often you want him in a 1x1 area, and then you would still need to push them, use something with trapdoors, a workstation, something like this. Overall, I have to say, in a specific circumstance, this needs no setup at all. But this circumstance is very rare, and usually you need a lot of setup to use boats. So I'm giving it 2 out of 3 points. A little bit sketchy, maybe 1.5 out of 3 points. Then regarding speed, in the specific case of having a big ocean, I think using a boat is one of the fastest methods. But if you are on land or in any other scenario on a mountain, it is the slowest way you can move the villages, and it gets annoying really fast. In the specific case, 3 out of 3. In general, 1 out of 3. And finally, precision. And I think there is no specific case where the boat has a good precision. I'm giving it 1 out of 3 points. And finally, we have the method of moving villagers with a minecart. I think the main issue with transporting villages with a minecart is building the track and then the loading and the unloading of the villager. Easiest is probably to either dig a hole for the villager to fall into or build something around him and have some kind of track in there and just put the minecart on it and have it move. Because if you push a villager onto a track with a moving minecart, it just enters it. So it's not that difficult, but it's sometimes annoying. Once you have a villager in a minecart, it's actually quite easy. We can break this rail, place this one, connect it here, and just push him back onto the track. And if we push a little bit, he will end up in his destination. Now the big question is, how do we get this guy out of the minecart? And again, I think there are 2 good ways to do so. If we think about precision again, we can again build a staircase, have a bumper on the back and maybe on the sides, and the villager in the minecart will easily end up in this 1x1 area. Now we have to be careful though, and I think many people have experienced this with a lot of frustration and sometimes don't know why this happens. If we press F3 and B again to see the hitboxes, we can destroy the minecart and the villager will glitch out of this area outside, as you can see just here. And the problem with this is that the corners are not blocked. If we block the corners like this, there is no airspace in the corners and the villager can't glitch out and it will actually stay inside the 1x1 area. And the other way of deloading villagers, which is a lot more, reliable or technical or precise, is using activator rails. It also needs a little bit more setup, but once you have set it up, it's super easy. You have to be careful with activator rails because they will eject the passenger of a minecart to the right of the direction it's moving in. So we have powered this block so that this activator rail is activated, and we have placed a block here. Let me put up a stone block so that it's easily visible. If there wasn't a block here, the villager won't be ejected. Let's test this out. And here we go. In this situation, we can maybe just come in from the side, make sure that the block below is empty, and break this block. He will fall down. Or you can have some other redstone contraption where you use a piston to remove this block. You register the ejection with a string and an observer. There are many tutorials with villager trading halls and this setup on YouTube. Another question could be how to pick up villagers. And sometimes when you have a villager breeder, for example, you have this system where you tube with glass where the villagers stand in. In order to set this up, you need to not have any villagers in there. I'm sorry. This side will be the side where we get out of. We place powered rails like this. So when here we eject the minecart, it goes up. We break this track again. Now we go into the tube, place a powered rail in here and connect it to the one in the tube. And now we remove the one in the tube again. What this will do is create this track where the cart goes up and kind of glitches through this glass onto this track again. If we then power all the powered rails, have villagers in there, even multiple, we can use a minecart, have it go and pick it up one villager. Another setup that I often see is an output like this from a villager breeder, where you have some water in one corner and all the villagers get pushed into this corner. And this will be then the corner where we also have our pickup system. I find for this system, it's a little bit easier to build the pickup system, or it makes a little bit more sense. You want to have a staircase like this, then you have powered rails again, just like this down there. You have the same principle. You have the track going through the glass basically. Let's put a block here so that the minecart starts immediately. And we put the minecart down and pick up a villager. To use minecarts to transport villagers, I think for the setup, we have to be honest here, it's getting 1 out of 3 points because it usually takes quite a bit of setup. But if we go to speed, we have a clear favorite, I think. It's 3 out of 3. Even if you have far distances, if you put up a track with powered rails, it goes quite quickly. And then with the precision, I think once you know the few hints and tricks with destroying the minecart and the villager not glitching out, I think the precision is also very good. So I'm also giving it 3 out of 3. And that's it. Honestly, I don't think there is one way of transporting villages that's clearly the best. I think it always depends on the situation. I often use boats, especially when I have an ocean or a river that I can go along. I very often use minecarts, especially when I need precision or when I have a breeder, when I want to pick up the villagers. And sometimes the workstation is just the simplest because you don't have to set up so much. And if I have to go over a mountain and I only have a single villager to start up a breeder, for example, then I often would just use a workstation. And as a bonus clip, you can see how I transported my villagers on the Sakura Craft server in our most recent season. That's already over for a few months, but we had a lot of fun there, built a slime block launcher to transport the villagers up the mountain. This is obviously not very practical, but it was a lot of fun. So I hope you enjoyed this video, learned something. I enjoy making this content, so I will see you.